If you want to get better at improvising and soloing, this is what you need to practice. Hey everybody, David Rishpan here again with you on YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. Lately I have heard and read this question or a variation on this question quite frequently. Something along the lines of, I know my scales, I'm decent at theory, how do I improvise? Why don't I sound good when I solo? What's the next step to improving my soloing and my improvising? And the key is learning phrases, not just scales, phrases. I guess some people call them licks. I don't like the term licks. They're phrases, they're parts of vocabulary. If you've watched this channel or taken a lesson with me, you know that I return to linguistic metaphors quite a lot because I think learning how to improvise is very much like learning a language and becoming fluent in a language. And it's not everybody who knows the alphabet who can be a poet, be an actor, be a storyteller. That's a different skill that goes beyond just learning the language. So we're trying to tell stories when we improvise, right? And that requires a certain amount of knowing common phrases and knowing when to deploy those phrases and how to vary those phrases. Think of it this way. Think of your favorite movie quote, the most memorable phrase from your favorite movie, or something that has become part of the popular lexicon that comes from a movie. That's a phrase. And when we use that phrase, that's a reference to a whole other set of elements. You know, when we quote The Simpsons in conversation or when we quote a film, we're using those words and that series of words also to convey a whole other set of emotions and references that are all linked to that single quotable phrase from a movie. And in improvising, it's not really that much different. So what I recommend to my students and to all of you watching is work on phrases. How do we work on phrases? Take a phrase from a recording, from YouTube, from a musician that you admire and want to basically copy or steal from. So I'm going to take a very, very simple, rudimentary blues phrase. I'm in the key of E, E blues, E7. And I'm doing this very common blues walk down from 5 and 7 4 and 6, and then bending from the minor third, bending from the minor third to the major third with the fifth on top. That is the basic architecture of the phrase. And then in working on the phrase, I'm going to experiment with it. That is my baseline of content. That is what the material I am working with, right? And now I'm going to start varying it in all different kinds of ways. When I played it to introduce the example, I actually didn't play it that way. I played it alternating with the E above middle C. So instead of this, I actually did this. Already that is a variation on the phrase. What if I bend into the first double stop? What if I bend from the flat 5 into the 5? What happens if I bend all the fifths? Just in those very simple, almost inane questions, I'm already coming up with variations on the basic phrase, and I'm starting to develop a sense of what I like as a listener, what I like as an improviser, what I like as a soloist, and what I don't like. So level 1 would be just the basic ornamentation of the phrase. Level 2 would be adding a new beginning or adding a new ending and using kind of the phrase as the centerpiece of the phrase now. So I'm going to add something either before or after. In this example, I'm going to add something after. I'm going to play the phrase and find a way to finish it. For me, practicing improvising and working with these phrases, it's really like coming up with games, coming up with exercises, challenges, games for yourself. I think the most important thing in practicing improvising and becoming a better improviser is there has to be a certain amount of curiosity on your part that I can't teach you, no book can teach you, no teacher can really teach you. It has to come from you. That curiosity has to come from you. And the soloists I love the most, I hear that curiosity in their playing. I hear that search for the next thing in their playing. And maybe they won't actually execute 100% what they're going for. There's something about that being on the edge sound that is really, really powerful and captivating to me. That's maybe a separate a separate tangent, but you have to be the one to ask yourself all these questions and to search for all these things yourself in the music. So, what would happen if I repeat the first double stop more? If I extend that first double stop and then delay the rest of the walk down, the resolution of that phrase? So I played a chorus of blues and I basically used nothing else except that one phrase. And then it kind of morphed into something else for the turnaround. I could go for an hour just using that phrase and just trying to find all the permutations of that phrase and trying to find different questions to ask about that phrase, different ways of introducing it, different ways of ending it, different ways of repeating it, different ways of, playing it half as fast. I haven't even begun to start transposing it or modifying it to fit the changes within the blues. I've been playing kind of blues scale or playing over the changes, playing across the changes, let's say, instead of playing in the changes and navigating through the changes. Here's what it sounds like if I modify the phrase to really fit inside of each chord, the 1, 4, and 5. The other big thing that I find when I'm working with pianists or guitarists, basically instrumentalists who don't need to breathe to produce sound. One trap that we fall into is the fact we don't need to breathe to produce sound. And so, as improvisers, especially if we came up learning scales and using scales as our entry point into improvising, we have a tendency to run on and on and on forever because we can. We don't need to breathe to make sound. Again, think of someone you've had a captivating conversation with. Think of your favorite actor, your favorite speech maker, your favorite rapper. They always breathe, and it's where they breathe and where they pause and where they give emphasis and accents and gravity to what they're saying. That's what makes them captivating and compelling. right? As a pianist, I need to be very aware of that because, like I said, I can fall into the trap of not breathing and not stopping. All those notes are right. They all work. They're all in the E blues scale. But without any rhythmic or melodic arc, which comes from stopping, it comes from breathing, it comes from letting your statement resonate and kind of sit with the people you're talking to. It's the difference between talking to and talking at somebody, right? So, as a pianist or a guitarist, really pay attention to your breath. How long can you sustain a phrase before you need to breathe? 1, 2, 3. The last thing I would say is that if you're transcribing something, if you're learning a solo, if you're learning licks or phrases, it's not enough to just learn the phrase and that's it. Learning the phrase is the beginning of the work, really. Think of an actor who gets a script and learns their lines, and that's it. That's not where the work ends. That's not nearly where the work ends. They have to dive into the character and understand what motivates the character to say those lines. And for an actor in theater, much like an improvising musician, as much as we're playing the same tune every night, we can look at that tune in different ways each time. The same way the actor might look at the role in a bit of a different way every single night in live theater. So I encourage you to be extremely curious and extremely analytical, to really pick apart the soloists you love, the musicians you love, the singers you love, and really understand for yourself what makes it compelling emotionally, what makes it compelling melodically, what makes it captivating rhythmically. And in that process, in that investigation, in that deep dive into the material, that's how you will learn to improvise. That's how you will become a better improviser and soloist. All right, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't done so already, please click all the little buttons below the video, like, subscribe, and the bell notification for when the new videos go online. My name is David Rishpan. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you again in the next one. Cheers. Right? When we quote the symptom, when we quote the symptoms,